and welcome back. Today we are creating a soft pleated skirt, a style where the pleats have a gentle, undefined look. It's similar to a gathered skirt, but the volume is controlled so that the silhouette stays clean and streamlined. The appearance of soft pleat depends on how much volume you add and how the folds are arranged. Many fabrics can work for this style: wool, cotton, silk, and synthetics, as long as they are lightweight and stable enough to hold the soft folds. For this episode, I'm choosing a double weave fabric from the CLO library with a blend of wool, acrylic, polyester, and nylon. The mix gives us a nice balance. The wool provides body, the acrylic and nylon add stability, and the polyester helps the pleats keep their shape. Before drafting, we'll look at the Bunka diagram to identify which measurements are already given and which ones we need to calculate. Then we'll build a waistband, determine hem width based on fabric limits, draw the silhouette, and place the pleats evenly around the skirt. Okay, let's get started with reviewing the diagram. As you see, front and back panel have same pattern, and the pattern is symmetrical, which means the center front and center back line should be on the folded edge of the fabric. As you see in the diagram, some measurements are mentioned, like the width of the fabric, which is 110 cm, or the amount which we go in at top of the rectangle, like 10 cm, or the amount we go up from the waist, like 3.5. But some measurements are not mentioned, like the measurement you see with the symbols, like the white circle, black circle. So I'm going to show you how to calculate those measurements, and I have prepared two charts in which we can see what measurement we have or they are given and what measurement we need to calculate. So the first important measurement is the skirt hem or width, which based on that we will draw our rectangle. And we should know that we might have limitation when choosing this measurement. As you see, our final pattern is wide, and if we want to cut this on actual fabric with normal width, we need to consider that our pattern cannot be wider than certain amount. So usually a common width for the fabric is 110 cm, but you can change it based on the fabric you buy. If your fabric has wider or narrower width, you can of course change this measurement. Let me show you how actually this pattern is placed on the fabric in CLO. In CLO, if you go to the top menu and you see a simulation tab, you can go to print layout. And if you actually choose the fabric that you have for your skirt, you can see how it is placed on the fabric. And as you see, you cannot make the pattern wider than the width of your fabric, and you also need to consider the seam allowance. So you cannot go up to the edge of the fabric. You need to put some seam allowance. Now I go back to the simulation mode, and that's how you determine the width of your rectangle. So let's start creating the pattern, and one by one I can show you how to get this measurement. Either they are given or the ones that you need to calculate. Let's start making waistband first. As you see in the diagram, the waistband is made in half and it is folded on the side seam. But for our pattern making, I wanna make it two-piece waistband, one for front, one for back, because it is easier, and then if you want, you can join the side seam together. And for that we need the amount which is determined by the symbol with a circle and the slant line on it, and this amount is calculated by waistband plus 2 cm divided by 4. So We can make a rectangle with that amount as our width and the height of 3 cm or 4 cm for our waistband. This depends on your style, how wide your waistband should be. Then you right click on the one of the edge of the waistband and make a symmetrical piece. This is our center front or front waistband, and we can make a copy of it and just name it back waistband and name the center line center back. So we are done with our waistband and we can start making the skirt again. As I mentioned, for the width of the skirt, it depends on the width of your fabric, and it is calculated by dividing the width of the fabric by 2 minus the seam allowance, which is 3 cm. So the width of the waistband will be 52 and the height is a length of your skirt, which is based on your style. You can choose any number for your skirt length. Now the next step is to going inside at top edge of your waist by 10 cm. This amount is given in the diagram and we use the same amount. Then from this point you draw a straight line to the bottom edge of your rectangle, the left corner. Then for calculating the symbol, which is 2 circles inside each other, you need to first draw the hip line. The hip line is where your hip depth measurement is. I can show you how it is measured from avatar. You just turn on the measurements on your avatar, and with the measurement tool which measures the height from the floor, you can measure the distance from floor to waistline and from floor to hip line. Then subtract those measurements from each other and it gives you the hip depth, which is the distance between waistline to hip line. So we calculate this measurement to be 20.5 approximately, and we can draw the hip line by offsetting the upper edge of waistline by this amount, 20.56. Now the next step is going in 1 cm from the guideline we have drawn and connect it to the hip line, and then curve this line a little bit. I usually find the middle of side seam and go out by 0.25 centimeters to give it a slight curve. Then pick the point on the upper edge of your side seam and extend it above by 3.5 cm like the diagram. Now we can make the waist curve. As you see in diagram, it is recommended to move down the center front point by 0 to half of a centimeter. I choose 0 for our pattern, and then with a smooth curvature tool I create a curve for our waistline. Now we can find the amount which is determined by the 2 circle symbol. We just need to mark the hip depth, which was 20.56 on our side seam, and split it, and the amount which is remained between this mark and the hip line gives us 3.95, which is the amount shown by 2 circle symbol. So we can go up at hem by this amount. As you see, they are marked with the same symbol. So we can split our side seam near the hemline by 3.95. And now we can draw the curve. As you see, first the hemline is divided by 3 equal parts to show that where your hemline should touch the horizontal line. So first I do that, divide the hemline by 3 equal parts, then draw the guideline for my hemline. Before creating the actual hemline, I can trace out my pattern. So I'm picking the trace tool and choose all the lines for our skirt. Now with the smooth curvature tool, it's easier to make our hemline. I'm just trying to touch the guideline where I made the mark. Next, check your angles. Make sure the angles are close to 90 degree at center front, center back, and side seam. I'm converting my hip line back to baseline so that they don't interfere with pattern making. Now we can start creating the internal lines for our pleats. Let's find out what the white circle amount is. First, you need to split your waist measurement on the skirt. You can find it from the waistband, which was 19.87. This is your waist measurement, and the rest will be the pleat allowance. To mark the first pleat, you see it is mentioned 3.5 cm. This is a given amount and depends on your style. I'm going to choose 4 cm because for my style I want the center pleat to be a bit wider. So first mark that. You can choose 3.5 like the diagram, or more like 4 cm. The rest I divide by 4 equal parts because I need 4 pleats, and these amounts that are divided, 3.97, will be the distance between my pleats, which are the white circles. Now to find out what is the black circle is, you divide the rest of the amount you have on your waist by 4, which gives you the number 5.13. This is the width of your pleat or your pleat depth. I've also divided by 2 because I want to give equal distance on each part of the pleat, on each side of the pleat. Okay, now that I know the amount of white circle and black circle, I can remove the extra points. I click on them and right click, convert to curve point. Now for the hemline, how do we calculate the black triangle amount? As you see, the hemline is divided to 4 equal parts and the black rectangle is 1/4 of the hem. So I measure the hemline and divide it by 4. 12.89 gives us the black triangle, and divided by 2 it gives us 6.45. For marking the points at the hemline, we need to first find out the middle lines of the pleats, and the first one is the triangle amount divided by 2, which we calculated to be 6.45. We can mark this point at beginning and end of the line. Then we can find the other 2 middle points by marking 12.9 from each of these points. As you see, the distance between each point in the middle is 12.9. Now we can mark 1 cm on each side of these middle points like the diagram. That was for the hem, and now for the skirt, you see we have splitted our 4 cm in the beginning. After that we have to mark the black circle amount, which we had calculated to be 5.13, and then after that we need to mark the white circle amount, which was the distance between each pleat, 3.96. And with the same order we mark the pleats and the distance between the pleats until we reach the end. Okay, now that I have marked most of our points, I didn't mark the middle of pleat at waist, but it's okay. And now we can draw the lines on sides of our pleats. With the internal polygon tool, I connect the points to each other. As you see, I hadn't marked the center point for the waist pleat, but it's easy to do it right now. We can click on both lines holding shift, then right click and distribute a line in the middle. But just make sure right click on the new line and extend trim to the pattern outline. This way you have a point on the middle of the pleat at top as well. So I repeat the process for all the pleats now, and after all of my lines are drawn, I can give the angles to the pleats. I pick the pleat fold tool and mark all of my pleats, and make sure I have three internal lines for each pleat, and choose the knife pleat option. I will check the angles of my pleat. The order of angles should be 0, 360 and 180. I also pick all my internal lines and check the fold rendering on, and give the strength of 10 to my fold lines. Okay, now half of my front panel is ready. I can right click on the center front and make a symmetrical piece. For sewing the pleats, I was not able to use the pleat sewing tool for these pleats because the distance between the pleats was not equal to the pleat depth, and I ended up sewing the waistband to each pleat separately. So let's first sew our waistband by sewing the end parts of our waistband, making sure it's in the correct place. It has elastic on upper edge with the ratio of 100, and it has the bonding. Now we can bring our front skirt, strengthen the piece. So first I mark the 4 cm on my waistband as well by a split tool, and then find the spaces between each pleat and mark all those on my waistband. As you see, for calculating those, we had divided the waistband by 4 equal parts after dividing the 4 cm, of course. So we can do the same on our waistband, and then start sewing the spaces between each pleat to the waistband. I'm doing that with the free sewing tool. So as you see, I'm not sewing the pleat yet. I'm just sewing the spaces between each pleat to the waistband. Now if you press simulate, your pleats are made, but if you hide your avatar, you'll see that upper edge of pleats are not sewn together or to the waistband. So now we can do that manually by free sewing tool or segment sewing tool. It's a little bit time consuming, but I'm going to show you how to sew them. It's better to have your 3D window on so that you see the direction of your sewing. First I sew upper edge of each pleat together, then I sew one edge of our pleat to the waistline, as you see in the video. So I'll do the same process for all the pleats. The good news is once you sew the pleats for the front, you don't need to do it for the back. You just copy the front panel for the back and you can sew it in place. You just need to make sure the direction of sewing are correct for the back panel. So as you see, I'm sewing the waistband to the back panel the same way we did for the front. Just after simulation, I noticed the direction of my pleats are not correct. I'm just correcting them by changing the 0 and 360 angles to the opposite direction. You don't need to change the 180 degree. So now when I press simulate, the pleats are done correctly, and now I can sew the side seams together. Okay, our pattern making is done. I'm just adding the actual fabric to the skirt, which as I mentioned is a double weave from CLO library. You see the drape of the fabric is nice and the overall fit is good. I unfreeze the waistband and I also can create a double layer for my waistband. Just right click on your waistband and use clone under. This way you'll have 2 layers for your waistband. I changed the particle distance of my skirt to 10. To review the fit, you can open the grid and see that your hemline is at same level at left and right and front and back. If you are applying a print on your fabric like me, you can open the texture editor and change your print. Okay, our skirt is done. I hope you have liked this tutorial and thank you for watching. See you next Saturday.